is called Late Night Tow Call. Alright, Late Night Tow Call. Hopefully this is okay to post here. My story is not one where I was the target of someone's stalking or harassment, but one where I was the guy who was at the right place at the right time. And I'm fairly certain my inadvertent intervention may have saved someone I'd never met from, well, who knows what. Know me from Adam, know me from Eve is probably what they were thinking. Okay, this was back in 2015, 2016. I'm a career tow truck driver. At this point, I've been towing cars for most of my adult life and will likely do so until I either retire or die, whichever comes first. At the time, I was working for a pretty small towing company with only 2 employees, and we rotated who was on call each weekend. It was my weekend on call, and it was summer, so with people being out and about late and whatnot, I was pretty busy cleaning up accidents, towing broken down cars, both in the city and off the highway. I was fine with it, as I was paid commission at the time, so the more calls I did, the more money I made. So it's a Saturday night, now Sunday morning, and it's around 2:33 in the morning. And like I said, I've been busy. I'm tired, a little grumpy, and kind of want to go home when my phone rings. It's an insurance company calling, asking if we can do a tow for one of their customers who has broken down on the side of the highway. The breakdown location they give me is about 15 miles out of town, which I normally wouldn't do, but the tow destination happens to be a dealership that's just a couple minutes from my apartment. I contemplate rejecting the call, but because I'm paid commission, I figure, screw it, I can run up and grab this car, drop it off around the corner from my place, then hopefully I can head home and get a couple hours of shut-eye. So I take the call and hop on the highway. The insurance company provided me with the customer's first name, which we'll say was Kara, and gave me a phone number for her. Usually, I try to make contact with people who are on the side of the highway to let them know I'm on the way and give them an ETA. I try calling her a couple of times, but she doesn't answer. Not unusual. After a short while, I see hazard lights up the way on the shoulder, so I turn on my strobes and start slowing down as I approach. I notice that not only is there the late model car that I'm looking for, but there's another car on scene as well that doesn't have its hazards on, but it's parked in front of the car I meant to tow. This is annoying, but again, not uncommon, as I need to be able to get in front of the disabled car in order to load it, and sometimes people don't realize that. But because the other car is there, I instead pull behind both cars. You do this so that as the tow driver, you're the one that has to make the weird maneuver of pulling off the shoulder and back onto the shoulder, and that the other cars just have to drive straight forward on the shoulder. Otherwise, if I pulled up in front, then the other car would have to go around me, and it's unprofessional and unsafe To make them do that, standing at the trunk of the late model car, which is now directly in front of me, are a man and a woman. The woman is probably in her early 20s and dressed to the nines for a night out. She's about 5'1" or 5'2". She's wearing tight leather-ish or something pants, probably pleather. A halter top, long black hair, very pretty. The man is probably around 5'10" and skinny, maybe 150, 160 pounds, wearing a dark hoodie and dirty jeans. They're standing very close, facing each other. She has her arms crossed and he's leaning down, talking to her. I step out of my truck and approach them both, introduce myself. They separate a few feet, and I look to the woman and say, "Are you Kara?" She nods. I say, "I'm here from her insurance company," and I ask, "What's going on with the car?" Immediately, the man pipes up and says, "Yeah, it's just having some fuel issues. It's an easy fix. Can you just drop it off at this commuter parking lot? I'm gonna fix it for her there." I'm rather annoyed at this, because the commuter lot in question is further up the highway, and I'm already 15 miles out of town, like I said before. I only took this call because it was supposed to be coming back toward my apartment, and I really wanted to go home. Not only that, but in order to change the original tow destination, I would have to call the insurance company back, wait on hold for who knows how long for a representative, and then let them know of the change and try to get them to pay me extra for the deadhead miles back home after unloading. And I really didn't want to do any of this. And thirdly, this is a late model car. I'm no mechanic, but it's new enough that whatever is wrong with it is likely covered under warranty. So the dealership is really the best place for it to go anyways. I explain all of this to the guy, but he's really not having it. He gets stern with me, saying something like, "Look, man, you just need to take the car where I tell you to take it." We go back and forth on this for maybe 60 seconds, and he's just getting madder. "Well, you know what, man? You're not the named insured. Kara is. The easy way to settle this is to ask what she wants me to do with the car, and whatever she says is what I'll do. Fingers crossed, she'll want to take it to the dealership so I can get home sooner." I turn to look at Kara to ask her that question, and I don't see her right away. She's no longer standing where she was just a minute ago, which was slightly off to my right. I continue to not see her until I've turned almost all the way around, because she's standing directly behind me, and by directly, I mean within an inch of my arms. Within an inch of my back, arms still crossed. I look down at her, and she locks eyes with me. Her eyes are wide as plates, almost owl-like, and immediately it feels like she's staring into my soul. She didn't say a word, and she didn't have to. I took a step back and did what felt like a double take. I looked at him, then at her, and then ever so slightly shook her head no. The expression on her face when I asked her that will be forever burned in my skull. I turned to the guy and I was like, oh, you gotta go, man. Now, I'm not a tough guy. I'm a total beta male, if there is such a thing, and I don't care who knows it. I have nothing to prove. I'm super averse to confrontation and will run at the first sign of trouble. And I'm not exactly the biggest of guys either. I am, however, what I like to call sturdy. I'm 5'8" and 240 pounds. I have a bit of a gut, but I also have big thighs and broad shoulders, and people are generally surprised to find out what I weigh, as much as I do. And I think that might have been my saving grace for what happened next. Without a word, the guy starts to move for Kara, and I move to stay between them. He tries to push me out of his way by shoving me in the chest, but because I believe he underestimated my weight, only pushed me hard enough to make me take a single step back. Immediately, I took that step forward towards him and body check him hard, as hard as I could, hard enough to completely knock him over, basically onto his ass. Because we rotated during the back and forth push bit, Kara is now in front of me to my right, somewhat between me and the guy who's trying to scramble to his feet. I reach out and snatched the poor girl up by her waist, spun her towards my truck, and yelled for her to get into the driver's side, and she does so. I turn back to the guy, who's standing up again at this point, and he's breathing hard. He gets right up in my face, but he doesn't do anything, just breathes at me. I stare at him, right in his face, and mustering up the best dad voice I can muster, just say, "You need to go. I'm shaking now." And I'm absolutely terrified. I don't know if he has a weapon. I don't know if he's going to try to fight me, and I don't know what I would do if he did. Like I said, I'm not a tough guy. I don't know how to fight. I've never been in a fight in my life. What if I get hurt badly? What if I get stabbed? What do I even do now? I just want to go home. For fuck's sake, I wasn't even going to take this damn call. All this is running through my head at lightning speed after probably around 15 seconds or so, which felt like eons. He kind of huffs a bit, smiles, one of the creepiest smiles I've ever seen, and starts to back off, sucking his teeth and rubbing his hands together. He slowly walks backwards a few steps, then makes his way to the front car, gets in, and drives off. I stayed motionless, watching him until I could no longer see his taillights. I got Kara's car loaded up on the tow truck, and as we made our way to the dealership, she told me through tears that her car had shut off while she was driving, and she had pulled onto the shoulder and called her parents because she was on their insurance. Her parents made the call to the insurance company, who eventually dispatched me to her location. While she was waiting, a bit after she made the call, the guy pulled up in front of her and walked up to her passenger side window to try to talk to her, asking if she needed help, etc. And she told him she was fine, that a tow truck was coming, and she didn't need help. He persisted, and she tried to tell him off, and eventually tried to roll up the window. Apparently, he stuck his arm in the window and got the door unlocked and opened the door. In fear, she jumped out of the car, leaving her phone inside, and ran to the back of her car and stayed put there because it was in the line of sight of traffic. Apparently he was pretty lewd to her, and whenever whenever she tried to go back to the car, he would prevent her from getting in. Several minutes later, I showed up. Who knows what would have happened had the timing been any different. Her parents were waiting at the dealership when we arrived, and she told them what had just happened. Her parents gave me a $20 tip, which was all the cash they had on them at the time, and Kara gave me a very tight and clearly heartfelt hug. Before I left, I never saw her again. I tell you that. Every guy has daydreamed at some point of coming to the rescue of a pretty girl in trouble, myself included. You think you're gonna be a hero, that you're gonna be the cat's ass, you're gonna slay the dragon and get the girl and ride off into the sunset like the king you are. But for me, being in that situation in the moment was one of the most terrible feelings I've ever had in my life. Forced into a confrontation I didn't want, nor was prepared for, not knowing what to expect from a clearly not well-hinged individual. I didn't feel like the cat's ass, and I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a scared little kid encountering a bully on the playground for the first time. If I'm ever in a situation like that, I will not intervene. I will never not intervene. I just really hope I don't have to. Thanks for reading. Alright, here's the second story. It's called Just Open the Door. I've known about this subreddit for a while now, but I've never gotten around to telling my own story, which of course I never thought I'd have. Since it's long, I won't bother with a long intro. This is all you need to know. This happened in my senior year of college, and I lived off campus. I had 2 roommates in my apartment townhouse thing named Natalie and Katie. Anyway, Katie was out that night doing homework in one of the school buildings. Excuse me, and I was awoken at 3 a.m. when I heard someone knocking at the door downstairs. I thought that was weird, considering the hour. Sorry, but I figured somebody had the wrong place and would realize and leave. The knocking didn't stop though, and I lay in bed for a good several minutes thinking, yeah, they'll go away now. They'll go away. They'll get bored, as one might expect. Though I started to grow confused and then kind of freaked out by this person's persistence. Then the knocking turned into banging, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. Honestly, I probably should have called the police instantly, but it was the middle of the night, and I was just confused, so I headed to the top of the stairs to see Natalie standing near the door, staring at it. Her room was on the bottom floor, so she had just walked up to it. We exchanged a baffled look because what the heck? It's 3 a.m. This is weird. Natalie called out and asked them who they were and what they wanted. We are friends of Katie's, said the voice on the other end, who sounded male and about our age. We know her boyfriend, and we heard she was feeling down, so we came to surprise her. That was already a weird story because, again, 3 in the morning. But thankfully, Katie wasn't even home, so we both informed them of this. Katie's not here. She's off doing something else. Good. They're going to leave, right? They came here to see Katie. She's not here. They'll leave us alone, and we can go back to sleep. Just open the door. I know. If I hadn't called the police before, I definitely should have done it now. It was weird, though. That night I realized why people do stupid stuff in horror films. Not only had I been woken up out of nowhere, but it feels surreal to be in a situation like this. Like there's no way you could actually be in danger. That only happens in horror movies and true crime documentaries and in questionable, creepy stories online. It would never happen to me. I'm just a random wasn't here, there was no need for them to stay. Eventually, Natalie asked what their names were. Throughout the encounter, we made out two distinct voices, but only one gave us a name, and I texted Katie without telling him, asking if she was friends with someone with that name. After a couple minutes, during which we were still arguing with the stranger, Katie replied, "I am, but I don't think she knows where I live." That wasn't good, but even worse, the person on the other side of the door, had a male voice. So this was a real name, but not the real person. Whoever this was knew stuff about Katie, like who she hung out with. I told Katie to stay where she was and not come back until we told her everything was okay. Finally, we told the guys that if they didn't leave, we were going to call the police. No. Don't call the police. Don't call the police, okay? If we wanted to do something bad, we already would have done it, right? Yeah, that last bit wasn't helping their case. Just open the door, okay? The attempts at reasoning with them basically devolved into them telling us, just open the door. Just open the door, over and over again, until we finally actually did call the police. We hid in Natalie's room and dialed 911 and explained what was going on. Thankfully, there was a police station close by, so it wouldn't take long for them to arrive. Unfortunately, I made the mistake of heading back into the living room and yelling through the door that we'd called the cops, but contrary to what you might think, that actually didn't seem to scare them at all. They seemed only mildly upset and kept arguing. To this day, I can only assume they just didn't believe us or something. Then we heard a neighboring home's door swing open, and a very pissed off man's voice. "If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police." For whatever reason, that was what caused them to freak out, and they drove off. The police arrived, and we told them the whole story. Natalie revealed that a couple of times she had just barely peeked through the blinds of a window close to the front door, and she noted that there were two guys, but only one of them was ever at the door at any given time. They would switch, with one at the door and the other sitting in the driver's seat of a car parked out front, presumably for getaway purposes. So yeah, that's reassuring. They also hadn't looked drunk, according to Natalie, and they definitely hadn't sounded like they were drunk. There wasn't much the police could do besides sweep the area a bit. Sorry, but they told us that if the stranger showed up again, to immediately call instead of engaging with them at all. One of the officers did give us some self-defense tactics and told us what kinds of household items or chemicals would work best for self-defense. After making sure everything was okay and reassuring us, they left, and we eventually called Katie and told her the weirdos were gone. She arrived and was understandably a bit shaken herself. We sat down and asked who might have known where she lived. She didn't know people who had come to the apartment. So, some people certainly, but Natalie hadn't recognized the guy outside as any previous visitors. Worse, it turned out that not only did they know Katie's friend's name, but they claimed to know her boyfriend, even though he didn't even live in the state where we were going to school. She swore up and down she didn't know anyone who would want to hurt her. By this point, it was around 5 a.m., so I didn't even bother going to sleep. Since I was going to a workshop that morning, I told a lot of my classmates the story, and it freaked them out too. And the entire day, Natalie and I jumped at every unexpected noise, every shadow unsavory people in secret? Did they want to hurt her? If they did, why did they never give up and go looking for her elsewhere? Was all of that just an excuse